This is Audible.
Penguin Audio presents Undisputed Truth by Mike Tyson with Larry Sloman. Read by Joshua Henry. This book is dedicated to all the outcasts, everyone who has ever been mesmerized, marginalized, tranquilized, beaten down, and falsely accused, and incapable of perceiving love. Prologue. I spent most of the 6 weeks between my conviction for rape and sentencing traveling around the country, romancing all of my various girlfriends. It was my way of saying goodbye to them. And when I wasn't with them, I was fending off all the women who propositioned me. Everywhere I'd go, there was some woman who would come up to me and say, "Come on, I'm not going to say that you raped me. You can come with me. I'll let you film it." I later realized that that was their way of saying, "We know you didn't do it." But I didn't take it that way. I'd strike back indignantly with a rude response. Although they were saying what they said out of support, I was in too much pain to realize it. I was an ignorant, mad, bitter guy who had a lot of growing up to do. But some of my anger was understandable. I was a 25-year-old kid facing 60 years in jail for a crime that I did not commit. Let me repeat here what I said before the grand jury, during the trial, at my sentencing, at my early release hearing, after I got out of prison, and what I will continue to say until they put me in the ground. I did not rape Desiree Washington. She knows it, God knows it, and the consequences of her actions are something that she's got to live with for the rest of her life. My promoter, Don King, kept assuring me that I would walk from these charges. He told me he was working behind the scenes to make the case disappear. Plus, he had hired Vince Fuller, the best lawyer that $1 million fee could buy. Vince just happened to be Don's tax attorney, and Don probably still owed him money. But I knew from the start that I'd get no justice. I wasn't being tried in New York or Los Angeles. We were in Indianapolis, Indiana, historically one of the strongholds of the Ku Klux Klan. My judge, Patricia Gifford, was a former sex crimes prosecutor and was known as the hanging judge. I had been found guilty by a jury of my peers, only one of whom was black. The other black jury member had been excused by the judge after a fire in the hotel where the jurors were staying. She dismissed him because of his state of mind. Yeah, his state of mind was that he didn't like the food he was being served. But in my mind, I had no peers. I was the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of boxing. I was a titan, the reincarnation of Alexander the Great. My style was impetuous, my defenses were impregnable, and I was ferocious. It's amazing how a low self-esteem and a huge ego can give you delusions of grandeur. But after the trial, this god among men had to get his black ass back in court for his sentencing. But first I tried some divine intervention. Calvin, my close friend from Chicago, told me about some hoodoo woman who could cast a spell to keep me out of jail. You piss in a jar, then put $500 bills in there, then put the jar under your bed for 3 days, and then bring it to her, and she'll pray over it for you, Calvin told me. So the clairvoyant broad is going to take the pissy pile of hundreds out of the jar, rinse them off, and then go shopping. If somebody gave you a $100 bill they pissed on, would you care? I asked Calvin. I had a reputation for throwing around money, but that was too much, even for me. Then some friends tried to set me up with a voodoo priest, but they brought around this guy who had a suit on. The guy didn't even look like a drugstore voodoo guy. This asshole needed to be in the swamp. He needed to have on a dashiki. I knew the guy had nothing. He didn't even have a ceremony planned. He just wrote some shit on a piece of paper and tried to sell me on some bullshit I didn't do. He wanted me to wash in some weird oil and pray and drink some special water. But I was drinking goddamn Hennessy. I wasn't going to water down my Hennessy. So I settled on getting a Santeria priest to do some witch doctor shit. We went to the courthouse one night with a pigeon and an egg. I dropped the egg on the ground as the bird was released and I yelled, "We're free!" A few days later, I put on my gray pinstripe suit and went to court. After the verdict had been delivered, my defense team had put together a pre-sentence memorandum on my behalf. It was an impressive document. Dr. Jerome Miller, the clinical director of the Augustus Institute in Virginia and one of the nation's leading experts on adult sex offenders, had examined me and concluded that I was a sensitive and thoughtful young man with problems more the result of developmental deficits than of pathology. With regular psychotherapy, he was convinced that my long-term prognosis would be quite good. He concluded, a term in prison will delay the process further and more likely set it back. I would strongly recommend that other options with both deterrent and treatment potential be considered. Of course, the probation officers who put together their sentencing document left that last paragraph out of their summary, but they were eager to include the prosecution's opinion. An assessment of this offense and this offender leads the chief investigator of this case, an experienced sex crime detective, to conclude that the defendant is inclined to commit a similar offense in the future. My lawyers prepared an appendix that contained 48 testimonials to my character, from such diverse people as my high school principal, my social worker in upstate New York, Sugar Ray Robinson's widow, my adoptive mother, Camille, my boxing hypnotherapist, and 6 of my girlfriends and their mothers, who all wrote moving accounts of how I had been the perfect gentleman with them. One of my first girlfriends from Catskill even wrote the judge, I waited 3 years before having sexual intercourse with Mr. Tyson, and not once did he force me into anything. That is the reason I love him, because he loves and respects women. But of course, Don, being Don, he had to go and overdo it. King had the Reverend William F. Crockett, the imperial first ceremonial master of the ancient Egyptian Arabic order Nobles Mystic Shrine of North and South America, write a letter on my behalf. The Reverend wrote, I beseech you to spare him incarceration. Though I have not spoken to Mike since the day of his trial, my information is that he no longer uses profanity or vulgarity, reads the Bible daily, prays and trains. Of course, that was all bullshit. He didn't even know me. Then there was Don's personal heartfelt letter to the judge. You would have thought that I had come up with a cure for cancer, had a plan for peace in the Middle East, and nursed sick kittens back to health. He talked about my work with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, visiting with sick kids. He informed Judge Gidford that every Thanksgiving we gave away 40,000 turkeys to the needy and the hungry. He recounted the time when we met with Simon Wiesenthal, and I was so moved that I donated a large sum of money to help him hunt down Nazi war criminals. I guess Don forgot that the Klan hated Jews as much as they hated blacks. This went on for 8 pages, with Don waxing eloquently about me. It is highly unusual for a person his age to be concerned about his fellow man, let alone with the deep sense of commitment and dedication that he possesses. These are godlike qualities, noble qualities of loving, giving, and unselfishness. He is a child of God, one of the most gentle, sensitive, caring, loving, my 20 years experience with boxers. Shit. Don should have delivered the closing arguments instead of my lawyer. But John Solberg, Don's public relations man, cut right to the chase in his letter to Judge Gifford. Mike Tyson is not a scumbag, he wrote. I might not have been a scumbag, but I was an arrogant prick. I was so arrogant in the courtroom during the trial that there was no way they were going to give me a break. Even in my moment of doom, I was not a humble person. All those things they wrote about in that report, giving people money and turkeys, taking care of people, looking out for the weak and the infirm. I did all those things because I wanted to be that humble person, not because I was that person. I wanted so desperately to be humble, but there wasn't a humble bone in my body. So, armed with all my character testimonials, we appeared in Judge Patricia Gifford's court on March 26, 1992, for my sentencing. Witnesses were permitted, and Vince Fuller began the process of calling to the stand Lloyd Bridges, the executive director of the Riverside Residential Center in Indianapolis. My defense team was arguing that instead of jail time, my sentencing should be suspended, and I should serve my probation term at a halfway house where I could combine personal therapy with community service. Bridges, an ordained minister, ran just such a program, and he testified that I would certainly be a prime candidate for his facility. But the assistant prosecutor got Bridges to reveal that there had been 4 escapes recently for his halfway house. And when she got the minister to admit that he had interviewed me in my mansion in Ohio and that we had paid for his airfare, that idea was dead in the water. So now it was only a matter of how much time the hanging judge would give me. Fuller approached the bench. It was time for him to weave his $1 million magic. Instead, I got the usual 2-bit bullshit. Tyson came in with a lot of excess baggage. The press had vilified him. Not a day goes by that the press doesn't bring up his faults. This is not the Tyson I know. The Tyson I know is a sensitive, thoughtful, caring man. He may be terrifying in the ring, but that ends when he leaves the ring. Now this was nowhere near Don King hyperbole, but it wasn't bad, except that Fuller had just spent the whole trial portraying me as a savage animal, a crude bore, bent solely on sexual satisfaction. Then Fuller changed the subject to my poverty-stricken childhood and my adoption by the legendary boxing trainer Cus D'Amato. But there is some tragedy in this, he intoned. D'Amato only focused on boxing. Tyson, the man, was secondary to Cus D'Amato's quest for Tyson's boxing greatness. Camille, who was Cus's companion for many years, was outraged at this statement. It was like Fuller was pissing on the grave of Cus, my mentor. Fuller went on, but he was as disjointed as he had been for the entire trial. Now it was my time to address the court. I got up and stood behind the podium. I really hadn't been prepared properly, and I didn't even have any notes. But I did have that stupid voodoo guy's piece of paper in my hand, and I knew one thing. I wasn't going to apologize for what went on in my hotel room that night. I apologized to the press, the court, and the other contestants of the Miss Black America pageant where I met Desiree, but not for my actions in my room. My conduct was kind of crass. I agree with that. I didn't rape anyone. I didn't attempt to rape anyone. I'm sorry. Then I looked back at Greg Garrison, the prosecutor, or persecutor in my case. My personal life has been incarcerated. I've been hurt. This was all one big dream. I didn't come here to beg you for mercy, ma'am. I expect the worst. I've been crucified. I've been humiliated worldwide. I've been humiliated socially. I'm just happy for all my support. I'm prepared to deal with whatever you give me. I sat back down behind the defense table, and the judge asked me a few questions about being a role model for kids. I was never taught how to handle my celebrity status. I don't tell kids it's right to be Mike Tyson. Parents serve as better role models. Now the prosecution had their say. Instead of the redneck Garrison who argued against me during the trial, his boss, Jeffrey Modisette, the Marion County prosecutor, stepped up. He went on for 10 minutes saying that males with money and fame shouldn't get special privileges. Then he read from a letter from Desiree Washington. In the early morning hours of July 19, 1991, an attack on both my body and my mind occurred. I was physically defeated to the point that my innermost person was taken away. In the place of what has been me for 18 years is now a cold and empty feeling. I'm not able to comment on what my future will be. I can only say that each day after being raped has been a struggle to learn to trust again, to smile the way I did, and to find the Desiree Lynn Washington who was stolen from me and those who loved me on July 19, 1991. On those occasions when I became angry about the pain that my attacker caused me, God granted me the wisdom to see that he was psychologically ill. Although some days I cry when I see the pain in my own eyes, I am also able to pity my attacker. It has been, and still is, my wish that he be rehabilitated. Modisette put the letter down. From the date of his conviction, Tyson still doesn't get it. The world is watching now to see if there is one system of justice. It is his responsibility to admit his problem. Heal this sick man. Mike Tyson, the rapist, needs to be off the streets. And then he recommended I do 8 to 10 years of healing behind bars. It was Jim Voiles' turn to speak on my behalf. Voiles was the local attorney hired by Fuller to act as local counsel. He was a great guy, compassionate, smart, and funny. He was the only attorney from my side that I related to. Besides all that, he was a friend of Judge Gifford's and a down-home guy who could appeal to the Indianapolis jury. Let's go with this guy, I told Don at the beginning of my trial. Voiles would have gotten me to some play, but Don and Fuller made a fool out of him. They didn't let him do anything. They shut him down. Jim was frustrated too. He described his role to one friend as one of the world's highest-paid pencil carriers. But now he was finally arguing in court. He spoke passionately for rehabilitation instead of incarceration, but it fell on deaf ears. Judge Gifford was ready to make her decision. She began by complimenting me on my community work and my treatment of children and my sharing of assets. But then she went into a rant about date rape, saying it was a term she detested. We have managed to imply that it is all right to proceed to do what you want to do if you know or are dating a woman. The law is very clear in its definition of rape. It never mentions anything about whether the defendant and victim are related. The date in date rape does not lessen the fact that it is still rape. My mind was wandering during this lecture. It really had nothing to do with me. We weren't on a date. It was, as the great comedian Bill Bellamy would say, a booty call. Enough said. But then I snapped back to attention. I feel he is at risk to do it again because of his attitude, the judge said and stared at me. You had no prior record. You have been given many gifts, but you have stumbled, she paused, to 10 years, she said. Fucking bitch, I mumbled under my breath. I started to feel numb. That was the rape count. Shit, maybe I should have drank that special voodoo water, I thought. On count 2, I sentence you to 10 years. Don King and my friends in the courtroom audibly gasped. That count was for using my fingers. 5 years for each finger. On count 3, I sentence you to 10 years. That was for using my tongue. For 20 minutes. It was probably a world record. The longest cunnilingus performed during a rape. The sentences will run concurrently, she continued. I fine you the maximum of $30,000. I suspend 4 of those years and place you on probation for 4 years. During that time, you will enter into a psychoanalytic program with Dr. Jerome Miller and perform 100 hours of community work involving youth delinquency. Now, Fuller jumped up and argued that I should be allowed to be free on bail while Alan Dershowitz, the celebrated defense attorney, prepared my appeal. Dershowitz was there in the courtroom, observing the sentencing. After Fuller finished his plea, Garrison, the redneck cowboy, took the floor. A lot of people would later claim that I was a victim of racism. But I think guys like Modisette and Garrison were just in it for the shine more than anything else. They didn't really care about the ultimate legal outcome. They were just consumed with getting their names in the papers and being big shots. So Garrison got up and claimed I was a guilty, violent rapist who may repeat. If you fail to remove the defendant, you depreciate the seriousness of the crime, demean the quality of law enforcement, expose other innocent persons, and allow a guilty man to continue his lifestyle. Judge Gifford agreed. No bail, which meant that I was heading straight to prison. Gifford was about to gavel the proceedings to an end when there was a commotion in the courtroom. Dershowitz had bolted up, gathering his briefcase and loudly rushed out of the courtroom, muttering, I'm off to see that justice is done. There was some confusion, but then the judge banged her gavel on her table. That was it. The county sheriff came over to take me into custody. I stood up, removed my watch, took off my belt, and handed them, along with my wallet, to Fuller. 2 of my female friends in the first row of spectators were crying uncontrollably. We love you, Mike, they sobbed. Camille got up and made her way to our defense table. We hugged goodbye. Then Jim Voiles and I were led out of the courtroom through the back door by the sheriff. They took me downstairs to the booking station. I was searched, fingerprinted, and processed through. There was a mob of reporters waiting outside, surrounding the car that would take me to prison. When we leave, remember to keep your coat over your handcuffs, Voiles advised me. Was he for real? Slowly, the numbness was leaving me and my rage was kicking in. I should be ashamed to be shown with handcuffs? That's my badge of honor. If I hide the cuffs, then I'm a bitch. Jim thought hiding my cuffs would stop me from experiencing shame, but that would have been the shame. I had to be seen with that steel on me. Fuck everybody else. The people who understand, they have got to see me with that steel on. I was going to warrior school. We exited the courthouse and made our way to the car, and I proudly held my cuffs up high. And I smirked as if to say, do you believe this shit? That picture of me made the front page of newspapers around the world. I got into the police car and Jim squeezed next to me in the back seat. "Well, farm boy, it's just you and me," I joked. They took us to a diagnostic center to determine what level prison I would be sent to. They stripped me naked, made me bend down and did a cavity search. Then they gave me some pajama-type shit and some slippers. And they shipped me off to the Indiana Youth Center in Plainfield, a facility for level 2 and 3 offenders. By the time I got to my final destination, I was consumed with rage. I was going to show these motherfuckers how to do time. My way. It's funny, but it took me a long time to realize that that little white woman judge who sent me to prison just might have saved my life. Chapter 1. We were beefing with these guys called the Puma Boys. It was 1976 and I lived in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and these guys were from my neighborhood. At that time, I was running with a Rutland road crew called the Cats, a bunch of Caribbean guys from nearby Crown Heights. We were a burglary team, and some of our gangster friends had an altercation with the Puma Boys, so we were going to the park to back them up. We normally didn't deal with guns, but these were our friends, so we stole a bunch of shit. Some pistols, a .357 Magnum, and a long M1 rifle with a bayonet attached from World War I. You never knew what you'd find when you broke into people's houses. So we're walking through the streets, holding our guns, and nobody runs up on us. No cops around to stop us. We didn't even have a bag to put the big rifle in, so we just took turns carrying it every few blocks. "Yo, there he goes," my friend Haitian Ron said. "The guy with the red Pumas and the red mock neck." Ron had spotted the guy we were after. When we started running, the huge crowd in the park opened up like Moses parting the Red Sea. It was a good thing they did, because boom, one of my friends opened fire. Everybody scrambled when they heard the gun. We kept walking, and I realized that some of the Puma Boys had taken cover between the parked cars in the street. I had the M1 rifle, and I turned around quickly to see this big guy with his pistol pointed towards me. "What the fuck are you doing here?" he said to me. It was my older brother, Rodney. "Get the fuck out of here." I just kept walking and left the park and went home. I was 10 years old. I often say that I was the bad seed in the family, but when I think about it, I was really a meek kid for most of my childhood. I was born in Cumberland Hospital in the Fort Greene section of Brooklyn, New York, on June 30th, 1966. My earliest memories were of being in the hospital. I was always sick with lung problems. One time, to get some attention, I put my thumb in some Drano and then put it in my mouth. They rushed me to the hospital. I remember my godmother gave me a toy gun while I was there, but I think I broke it right away. I don't know much about my family background. My mother, Lorna Mae, was a New Yorker, but she was born down south in Virginia. My brother once went down to visit the area where my mother grew up, and he said that there was nothing but trailer parks there. So I'm really a trailer park nigga. My grandmother Bertha and my great aunt used to work for this white lady back in the 30s, at a time when most whites wouldn't have blacks working for them. And Bertha and her sister were so appreciative that they both named their daughters Lorna after the white lady. Then Bertha used the money from her job to send her kids to college. I may have gotten the family knockout gene from my grandma. My mother's cousin, Lorna, told me that the husband of the family Bertha worked for kept beating on his wife, and Bertha didn't like it. And she was a big woman. "Don't you put your hands on her," she told him. He took it as a joke, and she threw. The next day he saw Bertha and said, "Well, how are you doing, Miss Price?" He stopped hitting on his wife and became a different man. Everybody liked my mom. When I was born, she was working as a prison matron at the Women's House of Detention in Manhattan, but she was studying to be a teacher. She had completed 3 years of college when she met my dad. He got sick, so she had to drop out of school to care for him. For a person that well educated, she didn't have very good taste in men. I don't know much about my father's family. In fact, I didn't really know my father much at all, or the man I was told was my father. On my birth certificate, it said my father was Purcell Tyson. The only problem was that my brother, my sister, and I never met this guy. We were all told that our biological father was Jimmy Curly Kirkpatrick Jr., but he was barely in the picture. As time went on, I heard rumors that Curly was a pimp and that he used to extort ladies. Then, all of a sudden, He started calling himself a deacon in the church. That's why every time I hear someone referring to themselves as reverend, I say, reverend/pimp. When you really think about it, these religious guys have the charisma of a pimp. They can get anybody in the church to do whatever they want. So to me, it's always, yeah, bishop/pimp, Reverend Ike/pimp. Curly would drive to where we stayed periodically. He and my mother never spoke to each other. He just beeped the horn and we'd just go down and meet him. The kids would pile into his Cadillac and we thought we were going on an excursion to Coney Island or Brighton Beach. But he'd just drive around for a few minutes, pull back up to our apartment building, give us some money, give my sister a kiss, and shake me and my brother's hands. And that was it. Maybe I'd see him in another year. My first neighborhood was Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. It was a decent working-class neighborhood then. Everybody knew one another. Things were pretty normal, but they weren't calm. Every Friday and Saturday, it was like Vegas in the house. My mom would have a card party and invite all her girlfriends, many of whom were in the vice business. She would send her boyfriend, Eddie, to buy a case of liquor, and they'd water it down and sell shots. Every fourth hand of cards, the winner had to throw into the pot so the house made money. My mom would cook some wings. My brother remembers that. Besides the hookers, they'd be gangsters, detectives. The whole gamut was there. When my mother had some money, she'd splurge. She was a great facilitator, and she'd always have her girlfriends over and a bunch of men, too. Everybody would be drinking. She didn't smoke marijuana, but all her friends did, so she'd supply them with the drugs. She just smoked cigarettes. Cool 100s. My mother's friends were prostitutes, or at least women who would sleep with men for money. No high-level or even street-level stuff. They would drop off their kids at our house before they went to meet their men. When they'd come to pick up their kids, they might have blood on their clothes, so my mom would help them clean up. I came home one day and there was a white baby in the house. What the fuck is this shit? I thought. But that's just what my life was like. My brother Rodney was 5 years older than I was, so we didn't have much in common. He's a weird dude. We're black guys from the ghetto, and he was like a scientist. He had all these test tubes, was always experimenting. He even had a coin collection. I was like, white people do this stuff. He once went to the chemistry lab at Pratt Institute, a nearby college, and got some chemicals to do an experiment. A few days later, when he went out, I snuck into his room, started adding water to his test tubes, and I blew out the whole back window and started a fire in his room. He had to put a lock on his door after that. I fought with him a lot, but it was just typical brother stuff, except for the day that I cut him with a razor. He had beaten me up for some reason, and then he had gone to sleep. My sister, Denise, and I were watching one of those doctor-type soap operas, and they were doing an operation. We could do that, and Rodney could be the patient. I can be the doctor, and you can be the nurse, I told my sister. So we rolled up his sleeve and got to work on his left arm. Scalpel, I said, and my sister handed me a razor. I cut him a bit, and he started bleeding. We need the alcohol, nurse, I said, and she passed it to me, and I poured it onto his cuts. He woke up screaming and yelling and chased us around the house. I hid behind my mom. He still has those slices to this day. We had some good times together, too. Once my brother and I were walking down Atlantic Avenue, and he said, "Let's go to the donut factory." He had stolen some donuts from that place before, and I guess he wanted to show me he could do it again. So we walked by, and the gate was open. He went in and got a few boxes of donuts, but something happened, and the gate closed, and he was stuck in there, and the security guard started coming. So he handed me the donuts, and I ran home with him. My sister and I were sitting on our stoop and cramming down those donuts, and our faces were white with the powder. Our mom was standing next to us, talking to her neighbor. "My son aced the test to get into Brooklyn Tech," she boasted to her friend. "He is such a remarkable student. He's the best pupil in his class." Just then, a cop car drove up, and Rodney was in it. They were going to drop him off at home, but he had heard our mother bragging about what a good son he was, and he told the cops to keep going. They took him straight to Spofford, a juvenile detention center. My sister and I happily finished off those donuts. I spent most of my time with my sister Denise. She was 2 years older than me, and she was beloved by everybody in the neighborhood. If she was your friend, she was your best friend. But if she was your enemy, go across the street. We made mud pies. We watched wrestling and karate movies and went to the store with our mother. It was a nice existence. But then when I was just 7 years old, our world got turned upside down. There was a recession, and my mom lost her job, and we got evicted out of our nice apartment in Bed-Stuy. They came and took all our furniture and put it outside on the sidewalk. The three of us kids had to sit down on it and protect it so that nobody took it while my mother went to find a spot for us to stay. I was sitting there, and some kids from the neighborhood came up and said, "Mike, why is your furniture out here, Mike?" We just told them we were moving. Then some neighbors saw us out there and brought some plates of food down for us. We wound up in Brownsville. You could totally feel the difference. The people were louder, more aggressive. It was a very horrific, tough, and gruesome kind of place. My mother wasn't used to hanging around those particular types of aggressive black people, and she appeared to be intimidated. And so were my brother and sister and me. Everything was hostile. There was never a subtle moment there. Cops were always driving by with their sirens on, ambulances always coming to pick up somebody, guns always going off, people getting stabbed, windows being broken. One day my brother and I got robbed right in front of our apartment building. One another. It was like something out of an old Edward G. Robinson movie. We would watch and say, "Wow, this is happening in real life." The whole neighborhood was also a hotbed of lust. A lot of people there seemed to be uninhibited. It wasn't uncommon to hear people talking on the street, "Suck my dick, eat my pussy." It was a different kind of environment from my old neighborhood. One day a guy pulled me off the street, took me into an abandoned building, and tried to molest me. I never really felt safe on those streets. After a while, we weren't even safe in our apartment. My mom's parties ended when we got to Brownsville. My mother made some friends, but she wasn't in the mix like she was in Bed-Stuy, so she started drinking heavily. She never got another job, and I remember waiting in those long lines with my mother down at the welfare center. We'd wait and wait for hours, and then we'd be right up front, and it was 5 o'clock, and they'd close the fucking shit on you, just like in the movies. We kept getting evicted in Brownsville, too. That happened quite a few times. Every now and then we get a decent spot, crashing for a short time with some friends or a boyfriend of my mother's. But for the most part, each time we moved, the conditions got worse. From being poor to being serious poor to being fucked up poor. Eventually, we live in condemned buildings with no heat, no water, maybe some electricity. In the wintertime, all four of us slept in the same bed to keep warm. We'd stay there until a guy would come and kick us out. My mother would do whatever she had to do to keep a roof over our heads. That often meant sleeping with someone that she really didn't care for. That was just the way it was. She'd never take us to a homeless shelter, so we'd just move into another abandoned building. It was so traumatic. But what could you do? This is what I hate about myself. What I've learned from my mother. There was nothing you wouldn't do to survive. One of my earliest memories is of welfare workers coming into the apartment to look for men under the bed. In the summertime, we'd go get the free lunches and free breakfasts. I'd tell them, "I got 9 brothers and sisters," so they'd pack more. I feel like I just went to war and got a bounty. I was so proud that I got food for the house. Can you imagine that bullshit? I'd open the refrigerator and see the bologna sandwich and the orange and the little carton of milk. 20 of them. I'd invite people over. "Do you need something to eat, brother? Are you hungry? We have food." We were acting like we paid for this with hard-earned money. It was a free lunch. I was a mama's boy when I was young. I always slept with my mother. My sister and brother had their own rooms, but I slept with my mother until I was 15. One time my mother slept with a man while I was in the bed with her. She probably thought I was asleep. I'm sure it had an impact on me, but that's just how it was. I got booted to the couch when her boyfriend Eddie Gillison came into the picture. They had a really dysfunctional love affair. I guess that's why my own relationships were so strange. They drink, fight, and fuck. Break up, then drink, fight, and fuck some more. They were truly in love, even if it was a really sick love. Eddie was a short, compact guy from South Carolina who was a worker at an industrial laundromat factory. He didn't get too far in school, and by the time my brother and sister got to 4th grade, he really couldn't help them with their homework. Eddie was a controlling guy, but my mother was a very controlling woman. So all hell would break loose on a routine basis. There was always some kind of fight, and the cops would come, and they'd go, "Hey, buddy, walk around the block." Sometimes we'd all get in on the fighting. One day my mother and Eddie were having a bad argument, and they got physical. I jumped in between them trying to defend my mom, and I was trying to restrain him, and whop! He slugged me in the stomach, and I went down. I was like, oh man, I can't believe this shit. I was just a little kid. That's why I never put my hands on any of my kids. I don't want them thinking I'm a monster when they get old. But back then, beating on a kid was just the way it was. Nobody cared. Now it's murder. You go to jail. Eddie and my mother fought over anything. Other man or woman, money, control. Eddie was no angel. When my mother had female friends over and they'd all get drunk and she'd pass out, he'd fuck her friends. And then they'd fight. There was really some barbaric stuff going on at each other with weapons and cursing. "You motherfucker, fuck you. And you nigga, suck my..." We'd be screaming, "Mommy, stop. No." Once, when I was 7 years old, they were fighting and Eddie punched her and knocked her gold tooth out. My mother started boiling up a large pot of water. She told my brother and sister to get under the quilt. But I was so mesmerized watching my wrestling program on the TV that I didn't hear her. My mother was so slick. She walked by and nothing happened. Then she came back into the room, and by then my sister and brother were prepared. They were hiding under the quilt. Eddie was sitting right next to me. And the next thing I heard was this boom, and the pot with the boiling water hit Eddie in the head. A little bit of water splashed on me. It felt like it weighed a ton. Ah! And he ran screaming out the door into the hallway. I ran after him. He turned around and grabbed me. "Oh, baby, that bitch got you too?" he said. "Yeah, the bitch got me. The bitch got me." We brought him back in the room and took his shirt off, and his neck and his back and the side of his face were covered in blistery bubbles. He looked like a reptile. So we put him on the floor in front of the little window air conditioner, and my sister sat down next to him. She took a lighter and sterilized the end of a needle and then burst the blisters one by one. My sister and I were both crying, and I gave him a quarter to cheer him up. When I think about it, I always thought of my mother as the victim in most situations, and Eddie did beat on her. I'm sure the lady Lib would think that her reaction was great, but I thought, how could you do that to somebody who was supposed to be your boyfriend? It made me realize that my mother was no Mother Teresa. She did some serious stuff, and he still stayed with her. In fact, he went to the store to buy her some liquor after she burned him. So you see, he rewarded her for it. That's why I was so sexually dysfunctional. That is the kind of life I grew up in. People in love cracking their heads and bleeding like dogs. They love each other, but they're stabbing each other. Holy shit, I was scared to death of my family in the house. I'm grown up around tough women who fight men. So I didn't think fighting a woman was taboo because the women I knew would kill you. You had to fight them, because if you didn't, they'd slice you or shoot you, or else they'd bring some men to take advantage of you and beat you up because they thought you were a punk. I was also scared to go outside. By then I was going to public school, and that was a nightmare. I was a pudgy kid, very shy, almost effeminate shy, and I spoke with a lisp. The kids used to call me Little Fairy Boy because I was always hanging out with my sister, but my mother had told me that I had to stay around Denise because she was older than me and had to watch me. They also called me Dirty Ike or Dirty Motherfucker because I didn't know about hygiene back then. We didn't have hot water to shower in, and if the gas wasn't on, we couldn't even boil water. My mother tried to teach me about it, but I still didn't do a very good job. She used to take soap and fill a bucket up with hot water and wash me. But when you're a young kid, you don't care about hygiene. Eventually, I learned it in the streets from the older kids. They told me about Brood and Paco Rabanne and Pierre Cardin. My school was right around the corner from our apartment, but sometimes my mother would be passed out from drinking the night before and wouldn't walk me to school. It was then that the kids would always hit me and kick me. They were like, "Get the fuck out of here, nigga, you nasty motherfucker." I would constantly get abused. They'd punch me in the face and I would run. We would go to school and these people would pick on us. Then we would go home and they'd pull out guns and rob us for whatever little change we had. That was hardcore. Young kids robbing us right in our own apartment building. Having to wear glasses in the first grade was a real turning point in my life. My mother had me tested, and it turned out I was nearsighted, so she made me get glasses. They were so bad. One day I was leaving school at lunchtime to go home, and I had some meatballs from the cafeteria wrapped up in the aluminum to keep them hot. This guy came up to me and said, "Hey, you got any money?" I said, "No." He started picking my pockets and searching me, and he tried to take my fucking meatballs. I was resisting, going, "No, no, no." I would let the bullies take my money, but I never let them take my food. I was hunched over like a human shield, protecting my meatballs. So he started hitting me in the head and then took my glasses and put them down the gas tank of a truck. I ran home, but he didn't get my meatballs. I should have clobbered those guys, but I was so scared because those guys were so brazen and bold that I just figured they must know something I didn't. "Don't beat me up. Leave me alone. Stop," I'd say. I still feel like a coward to this day because of that bullying. That's a wild feeling, being that helpless. You never ever forget that feeling. The day that guy took my glasses and put them in that gas tank was the last day I went to school. That was the end of my formal education. I was 7 years old, and I just never went back to class. After that, I would go to school to eat breakfast and then leave. I'd walk around the block for a couple of hours. Then I'd go back for lunch and leave. When school was out, I'd go home. One day during the spring of 1974, 3 guys came towards me on the street and started patting my pockets. "Got any money?" they asked. I told them no. They said, "All the money we find, we keep." So they started turning my pockets out, but I didn't have anything. Then they said, "Where are you going? You want to fly with us?" "What's that?" I said. So we walked over to the school, and they had me climb the fence and throw some plastic milk crates over to them. We started walking a few blocks, and then they told me to go into an abandoned building. Whoa, I don't know. I hesitated. I was one wimpy little kid against 3. But we walked in, and then they said, "Go to the roof, shorty." I didn't know if they were going to kill me. We climbed up to the roof, and I saw a little box with some pigeons in it. These guys were building a pigeon coop. So I became their little gopher, their smuck slave. Soon I found out that when the birds flew, they often landed on some other roof because they were lazy and in bad condition. I'd have to go downstairs, see which roof they landed on, figure out a way into that building, and then go up on that roof and scare the birds off. All day I chased the birds, but I thought that was pretty fun. I liked being around the birds. I even liked going to the pet store to buy their seed. And these guys were tough guys, and they kind of liked me for being their gopher. My whole life I had felt like a misfit, but here on the roof, I felt like I was home. This was what I was supposed to do. The next morning, I went back to the building. They were on the roof and saw me coming and started throwing bricks at me. "Motherfucker, what are you doing over here? You trying to steal our fucking birds?" one of the guys said. "Whoa, I thought this was my new home." No, I said. "I just wanted to know if you guys need me to go to the store for you or chase your birds." "Are you serious?" he said. "Get up here, shorty." And they sent me to the store to buy them cigarettes. They were a bunch of ruthless street guys, but I didn't mind helping them because the birds enthralled me. It was really cool to see a couple of 100 pigeons flying around in circles in the sky and then coming back down to a roof. Flying pigeons was a big sport in Brooklyn. Everyone from mafia dons to little ghetto kids did it. It's unexplainable. It just gets in your blood. I learned how to handle them, learned the characteristics of them. Then it became something that I became somewhat of a master of. And I took pride in being so good at it. Everyone would let their pigeons fly at the same time. And the name of the game was to try and catch the other guy's pigeons. It was like racing horses. Once it's in your blood, you never stop. Wherever I lived from that day on, I always built me a coop and had pigeons. One day we were on the roof dealing with the pigeons and an older guy came up. His name was Barkeem, and he was a friend of one of these guys' brothers. When he realized his friend wasn't there, he told us to tell him to meet him at a jam at the rec center in our neighborhood that night. The jams were like teenage dances, except this was no Archie and Veronica shit. At night, they even changed the name of the place from the rec center to the Sagittarius. All the players and hustlers would go there, the neighborhood guys who robbed houses, pickpocketed, snatched chains, and perpetrated credit card fraud. It was a den of iniquity. So that night, I went to the center. I was 7 years old, and I didn't know anything about dressing up. I didn't know you were supposed to go home and take a shower and change your clothes and dress to impress, and then go to the club. That's what the other guys who were handling pigeons did. But I went straight to the center from the pigeon coops, wearing the same stinky clothes with all this bird shit on me. I thought the guys would be there and they'd accept me as one of their own, because I was chasing these fucking birds off of these buildings for them. But I walked in and those guys went, "What's that smell? Look at this dirty, stinking motherfucker." The whole place started laughing and teasing me. I didn't know what to do. It was such a traumatizing experience. Everybody picking on me. I was crying, but I was laughing too because I wanted to fit in. Dressed and took pity on me. He came up to me and said, "Yo, shorty, get the fuck out of here. Meet me back at the roof, 8 a.m. tomorrow." The next morning, I was there right on time. Barkeem came up and started lecturing me. "You can't be going out looking like a motherfucking bum in the street. What the fuck are you doing, man? We're money makers." He was talking fast and I was trying to comprehend each word. "We're gonna get money out here, shorty. Are you ready?" I went with him and we started breaking into people's houses. He told me to go through the windows that were too small for him to fit through. And I went in and I opened the door for him. Once we were inside, he went through people's drawers. He broke open the safe. He was just really wiping them out. We got stereos, 8-tracks, jewelry, guns, cash, money. After the robberies, he took me to Delancey Street in the city and bought me some nice clothes and sneakers and a sheepskin coat. That night, he took me to a jam, and a lot of the same people who laughed at me at the other jam were there. I had on my new coat and leather pants. Nobody even recognized me. It was like I was a different person. It was incredible. Barkeem was the guy who introduced me into the life of crime. Before that, I never stole anything. Not a loaf of bread. Not a piece of candy. Nothing. I had no antisocial tendencies. I didn't even have the nerve. But Barkeem explained to me that if you always looked good, people would treat you with respect. If you had the newest fashion, the finest stuff, you were a cool dude. You'd have status. Barkeem took me to a roller skating rink on Utica Avenue, where I met these guys who were called the Rutland Road Crew. They were young, maybe 12 years old, but they dressed like grown men. Trench coats, alligator shoes, rabbit furs. Stetsons with the big brims. They had on designer clothes from Sergio Valente, Jordache, Pierre Cardin. I was impressed. Barkeem told me how they did it. These guys were pickpockets, chain snatchers, and robbers. They were just babies. They're in public school, and they've got watches and rings and necklaces. They're driving mopeds. People call them thugs, but we call them money niggas. That shit was crazy. Barkeem started introducing me to people on the street as his son. He was only a few years older than me, but it was street terminology that warned people not to disrespect me. It meant, this is my son in the streets. We're family, we rob and steal. This is my little moneymaker. Don't fuck with this nigga. People that respected him had to respect me now. He taught me which people to look out for, which people I couldn't trust because they would take my shit right from me. My life reminded me of Oliver Twist, with the older guy Fagin teaching all this stuff. He bought me a lot of clothes, but he never gave me a lot of money. He'd make a couple of $1,000 from robbing, and he'd give me $200. But at 8 years old, $200 was a lot of money. Sometimes he'd take out a piece of jewelry that we stole and let me borrow it for a few days. I took my criminality to another level with the Rutland Road crew. They were mostly Caribbean guys from Crown Heights. Barkeem knew the older set, the Cats. I started hanging out with the RRC, their junior division. I got involved in their little house robbing heists. We'd go to school, eat breakfast, and then we'd get on the bus and train and start robbing during school hours. That was the beginning of me feeling like I belonged. We were all equal as long as we put in our share of the robbing proceeds. Some people might read some of these things I'm talking about and judge me as an adult, call me a criminal, but I did these things over 35 years ago. I was a little kid looking for love and acceptance, and the streets were where I found it. It was the only education I had, and these guys were my teachers. Even the older gangsters said, "You shouldn't do this. Go to school." But I didn't want to listen to them. Even though they had respect in the street, they were telling us to stay in school at the same time they were out there robbing. All the guys respected me because I was a little moneymaker. I'd break off some for my friends who needed a little cash. I'd buy us all liquor and food. I started buying pigeons. If you had good birds, people respected you. Plus, it was a rush to steal things and then go out and buy clothes. I saw how everybody treated me when I came around, and I was dressed up nice with my shearling coat and my Pumas. I had a ski suit with the yellow goggles, and I've never been to a ski slope in my life. I couldn't even spell fucking Adidas, but I knew how they made me feel. One of the Rutland guys taught me how to pick locks. If you get a key that fits the hole, you just keep playing the key and it wears down the cylinder and you can open the door. I was like, fuck, man. When we opened some of those doors, you'd see silverware, jewelry, guns, stacks of money. We were so happy we were crying and laughing at the same time. We couldn't get it all. You couldn't walk down the street with that shit. So we just filled up our school bags with as much stolen goods we could stuff in them. One day my friend Curtis and I were robbing a house. The people who lived there were from the Caribbean, and so was Curtis. I was in this pitch black house and I heard, "Who's that? Is that you, honey?" I thought it was Curtis playing around, trying to scare me. So I said, "I'm trying to find a gun and the money. Look for the safe, all right?" "What, baby?" I realized then that it wasn't Curtis talking. It was the guy who lived there who was lying on the couch. I rushed to the door. "Curtis, this shit don't look right. Let's get out of here. Somebody is in here," I said. But Curtis was a perfectionist. Curtis wanted to lock the door instead of just running away. I ran the fuck out. The owner opened the door and smashed Curtis in the head and knocked him out cold. I thought he was dead. It wasn't until a year later that I saw him again. He was alive, but his face was all shattered. He got hit that hard. Yeah, it was the hard knock life for us. When we stole silverware or jewelry, we'd go to Sal's, a store on Utica and Sterling. I was a baby, but they knew me from coming in with older guys. The guys at the store knew I was coming in with stolen stuff, But I knew they couldn't beat me because I knew what shit cost back then. I knew what I wanted. Sometimes we'd be in the streets, and if it was noon and we saw a school, we'd just go into the school, go to the cafeteria, grab a tray, get in line, and start eating. We might see someone we want to rob, someone who had their school ring around their neck. So we'd finish the food, put the tray back, get by the door, grab the ring, and run out. We always wanted to look nice on the streets because normally, if you're a little black kid out in the city looking bummy and dirty, people harass you. So we looked nice and non-threatening. We had the school backpacks and little happy glasses and the Catholic school look with nice pants and white shirt, the whole school outfit. After about a year, I started doing burglaries by myself. It was pretty lucrative, but hanging in the street and jostling some lady's jewelry and cops would chase you, or what we called heroes would try to come in and rescue the day. It was more risk-taking for less money, but we loved the thrill. You normally had to have a partner to be a successful jostler. Sometimes it wouldn't even be planned, but you'd see someone you knew, so you teamed up. Sometimes you'd find that you had competition for jostling. You get on a bus and there might be someone already on the bus waiting to pickpocket some people. But you might be more obvious. That was called waking the bus. The bus was quiet before you got on, but now that you've come aboard, the bus driver makes an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some young men who just got on the bus. Watch your pockets. They will attempt to steal from you. So you get off at the next stop. But the quiet jostler gets off and comes after you. Motherfucker, you woke the bus up, he'll scream. And if he's an older guy, he might start beating on your ass and taking your money or the jewelry that you stole. People didn't like to go pickpocketing with me because I wasn't as patient or as good as they were. I was never smooth, like, I'm gonna play this nigga. I'm gonna do this right up and close in person. I was much better at blindsiding people. Any strong guy could blindside someone, but the trick was to be cunning and outsmart them. Most people would think, they're on to me, I'm gonna walk away. But not me. A lady might have her hand on her wallet all day, and we'd be watching, and she never takes her hand out of her pocket. And we'd follow her and then move away, but we'd have one little kid still watching her. And she'd let down her defenses for a few seconds and go do something, and he'd get it. Then he'd be gone. And before we got out, we'd hear a gut-wrenching scream, "Oh, my money, my money!" It was crazy. We didn't give a fuck. The most primitive move was to snatch somebody's gold chain. I used to do that on the subway. I'd sit by the window. That was when you could open the windows on the subway cars. I'd pull a few windows down, and then the car would stop, and new people would come on and sit by the window. I would get out, and as soon as the train slowly started moving, I'd reach in and snatch their chains. They'd scream and look at me, but they couldn't get off the train. I'd fix the clasp, hold the chain for a couple of days, look good and sport it, and then I'd sell it before the older guys took it from me. Even though I was starting to look the role, I never could get on with the girls back then. I liked girls, but I didn't know how to tell them I liked them at that age. One time I was watching these girls jump rope, and I liked them and I wanted to jump rope with them. So I started teasing them, and out of nowhere, these girls in the 5th grade started beating the shit out of me. I was playing with them, but they were serious, and I was just taken by surprise. I got serious about fighting back too late. By then, somebody came and broke it up, and they gotten the best of me. I didn't want to fight them. It was no surprise to my mother and my sister that I was robbing and doing antisocial things to bring money in. They saw my nice clothes, and I'd bring them food, pizza and Burger King and McDonald's. My mother knew I was up to no good. But by that time, she knew it was too late. The streets had me. She thought I was a criminal, and I would die or never turn out to be shit. She'd probably seen it before. Kids like me, like that. I would steal anything from anybody. I didn't have any boundaries. My mother would prefer to beg. She embarrassed me a bit because she was too honest. She was always asking for money. That's just the way she was. I gave my sister a lot of money for the house to help my mom out. Sometimes I'd give my mother $100 and she wouldn't pay me back. She didn't respect me like that. I'd say, "You owe me some money, Ma." And she'd just say, "You owe me your life, boy. I'm not paying you back." The big kids in the neighborhood knew I was stealing, so they would take my money and my jewelry and my shoes, and I would be afraid to tell my mother. I didn't know what to do. They beat me up and steal my birds, and they knew that they could get away with bullying me. Barkeem didn't teach me how to fight. He just taught me how to dress in nice clothes and wash my ass. Normally when someone was screaming at me in the street or chasing me, I would just drop my stuff and run. So now I was getting bullied again, but I was more of a mark. Growing up, I always wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted to be the guy talking shit. I'm the baddest motherfucker out here. I got the best birds. I wanted to be that street guy, the fly, slick talking guy, but I was just too shy and awkward. When I tried to talk that way, somebody would hit me in the head and say, "Shut the fuck up, nigga." But I got a taste of what it was like to bask in the adulation of an audience when I got into my first street fight. One day I went into this neighborhood in Crown Heights and I robbed a house with this older guy. We found $2,200 in cash and he cut me in for $600. So I went to a pet store and bought $100 worth of birds. They put them in a crate for me and the owner helped me get them on the subway. When I got off, I had somebody from my neighborhood help me drag the crate to the condemned building where I was hiding my pigeons. But this guy went and told some kids in the neighborhood that I had all these birds. So a guy named Gary Flowers and some friends of his came and started to rob me. My mother started messing with the birds and told me, and I ran out into the street and confronted them. They saw me coming and stopped grabbing the birds, but this guy Gary still had one of them under his coat. By then, a large crowd gathered around us. "Give me my bird back," I protested. Gary pulled out the bird from under his coat. "You want the bird? You want the fucking bird?" he said. Then he just twisted the bird's head off and threw it at me, smearing the blood all over my face and shirt. "Fight him, Mike," one of my friends urged. "Don't be afraid. Just fight him." I had always been too scared to fight anyone before. But there used to be an older guy in the neighborhood named Wise who had been a police athletic league boxer. He used to smoke weed with us, and when he'd get high, he would start shadowboxing. I would watch him, and he would say, "Come on, let's go." But I would never even slap box with him. But I remembered his style. So I decided, fuck it. My friends were shocked. I didn't know what I was doing, but I threw some wild punches and one connected, and Gary went down. Wise would skip while he was shadowboxing, so after I dropped Gary, my stupid ass started skipping. It just seemed like the fly thing to do. I had practically the whole block watching my glorious moment. Everybody started whooping and applauding me. It was an incredible feeling, even though my heart was beating out of my chest. "This nigga is skipping, man," one guy laughed. I was trying to do the Ali shuffle to no avail, but I felt good about standing up for myself, and I liked the rush of everybody applauding me and slapping fives. I guess underneath that shyness, I was always an explosive, entertaining guy. I started getting a whole new level of respect on the streets. Instead of, "Can Mike play with us?" people would ask my mother, "Can Mike Tyson play with us?" Other guys would bring their guys around to fight me, and they'd bet money on the outcome. They'd come from now, I had another source of income. I would win a lot, too. Even if I lost, the guy who beat me would say, "Fuck, you're only 11? That's how everybody started knowing me in Brooklyn. I had a reputation that I would fight anyone, grown men, anybody. But we didn't follow the Marcus of Queensbury rules in the street. If you kicked someone's ass, it didn't necessarily mean it was over. If he couldn't beat you in a fight, he'd take another route. And sometimes he'd come back with some of his friends, and they'd beat me up with bats. I began to exact some revenge for the beatings I had taken from bullies. I'd be walking with some friends, and I might see one of the guys who beat me up and bullied me years earlier. He might have gone into a store shopping, and I would drag his ass out of the store and start pummeling him. I didn't even tell my friends why. I'd just say, "I hate that motherfucker over there." And they jump in too and rip his fucking clothes and beat his fucking ass. That guy who took my glasses and threw them away, I beat him in the streets like a fucking dog for humiliating me. He may have forgotten about it, but I never did. With this newfound confidence in my ability to stand up for myself, my criminality escalated. I became more and more brazen. I even began to steal in my own neighborhood. I thought that was what people did. I didn't understand the rules of the streets. I thought everybody was fair game because I sure seemed to be fair game to everybody else. I didn't know that there was certain people you just don't fuck with. I lived in a tenement building, and I would rob everybody who lived in my building. They never realized that I was the thief. Some of these people were my mother's friends. They'd cash their welfare checks and maybe buy some liquor, and they would visit my mom, drink some liquor, and have some fun. I'd go into my room and go up the fire escape and break into their apartment and rob everything from their place. Then when the lady would go upstairs, she'd discover it and run back screaming, Lorna, they got everything. They got the baby's food. They got everything. After they left, my mother would come into my room. I know you did something, didn't you, boy? What did you do? I'd say, Mom, it's not me. Look around. Because I would take the food and stuff and leave it on the roof, and my friends and I would get it later. How could I have done anything? I was in the room, right here. I didn't go anywhere. Well, if you didn't do it, I'll bet you know who did it, you thief, my mother would scream. You're nothing but a thief. I never stole nothing in my life. I don't know where you come from, you thief. Oh, God. Can you imagine hearing that shit from your own mother? My family had no hope for me. No hope. They thought my life would be a life of crime. Nobody else in my family ever did stuff like that. My sister would constantly be telling me, what kind of bird don't fly? Jailbird. Jailbird. I was with my mother one time visiting her friend Vaya. Vaya's husband was one of those big money show-off guys. He went to sleep, and I took his wallet out of his pocket and took his money. When he woke up, he beat Vaya up real bad because he thought she had stole the cash. Everybody in the neighborhood started hating my guts. And if they didn't hate me, they were jealous of me. Even the players. I had nerve. It felt incredible. I didn't care if I grabbed somebody's chain and dragged them down the stairs with their head bouncing. Boom, boom, boom. Do I care? No. I need that chain. I didn't know anything about compassion. Why should I? No one ever showed me any compassion. The only compassion I had was when somebody shot or stabbed one of my friends during a robbery. Then I was sad. But you still fucking do it. You think they're not gonna kill you? That it can't happen to you? I just couldn't stop. I knew there was a chance I would get killed, but I didn't care. I didn't think I would live to see 16 anyway, so why not go hard? My brother Rodney told someone recently that he thought I was the most courageous guy he knew. But I didn't consider myself courageous. I had brave friends. Friends who would get shot over their jewelry or watches or motorcycles. They weren't giving it up when people robbed them. Those guys had the most respect in the neighborhood. I don't know if I had courage, but I witnessed courage. I always thought that I was much more crazy than courageous. I was shooting at people out in the open while my mother looked out the window. I was brainless. Rodney was thinking it was courage, but it was a lack of brain power. I was an extremist. Everyone I knew was in the life. Even the guys who had jobs were hustling on the side. They sold dope or were robbing. It was like a cyborg world where the cops were the bad guys and the robbers and the hustlers were the good guys. If you didn't hurt nobody, nobody would have talked to you. You would be labeled as square. If you did bad, you were all right. Somebody bothered you, they'd come fight you. They'd know you were one of the guys. I was so awesome, all these sleazy, smiley scumbags knew my name. Then things started to escalate. I began to come into intimate contact with the police. Getting shot at in Brownsville was no big deal. You'd be in the alley gambling, and some guys would come running in shooting at the other guys. You never knew when the shit was going to go down. Other gangs would drive through on their motorcycles and boom, boom, they'd take a shot at you. We knew where each crew would hang out, so we knew not to go certain places. But it's something else when the cops start shooting at you. One day a few of us were walking past a jewelry store on Amboy Street, and we saw the jeweler carrying a box. I snatched the box and we started running. We got close to our block and we heard car tires screech, and some undercover cops ran out of the car and boom, boom, they started shooting at us. I ran into an abandoned building that we had hung out in, and I knew I was free. I knew that building like the back of my hand. I knew how to get into the walls or go to the roof and go through a hole and be in the rafters above the ceiling. So I did that. I got on top of the ceiling and looked through the hole, and I could see anyone walking on the floor below. I saw the cops enter the building. They started walking across the floor, guns drawn, and one of them went right through a hole in the floor. "Holy shit! These fucking kids are busting my balls bringing me into this building," he said. "I'm gonna kill these fucking bastards." I'd be listening to these white cops talking and laughing to myself. The building was too fucked up for the cops to go to another floor because the steps were falling apart. But there was a chance that they might look up and see me hiding in the rafters and shoot my ass. I thought about jumping to the next roof because that was my building, but it was a 10-foot jump. So I made my way to the roof, and my friend who lived in my building was on his roof. I was on my knees because I didn't want to stand up and let the cops outside see me, but my friend was giving me the blow-by-blow. "Just chill out, Mike. They came out of the building, but they're still looking for you. There's a bunch of cop cars down there," he reported. I was waiting up on that roof for what seemed like an eternity. "They're down, Mike. They're down," my friend finally said. So I went down, but waited inside a little longer. My friends were looking around the block, making sure the cops weren't hiding there. Finally, he told me I could go out. I was blessed to make it out of that situation. The jewelry box we'd stole had all these expensive watches, medallions, bracelets, diamonds, and rubies. It took us 2 weeks to get rid of all that shit. We had to go sell some there, then go to a different part of town to sell other pieces. With all the jostling I did, it's somewhat ironic that my first arrest was over a stolen credit card. I was 10 years old. I obviously was too young looking to have a card. So I get some older guy to go into the store and tell him to buy this and that and buy something for himself. Then we'd sell the card to another older guy. But one time we were in a store on Belmont Avenue, a local store, and we tried to use the card. We were dressed clean, but we just didn't look old enough to have a credit card. We picked out all these clothes and sneakers and brought them to the counter and gave the cashier the card. She excused herself for a second and made a call. Next thing we knew, she had cut the card in half, and in seconds, the cops came in and arrested us. They took me to the local precinct. My mother didn't have a phone, so they picked her up and brought her to the station. She came in yelling at me and proceeded to beat the shit out of me right there. By the time I was 12, this started to be a common occurrence. I'd have to go to court for these arrests, but I wasn't going to jail because I was a minor. I used to hate when my mother would get to the precinct and beat my ass. Afterwards, her and her friends would get drunk and she'd talk about how she beat the shit out of me. I'd be curled up in the corner trying to shield myself, and she'd attack me. That was some traumatizing shit. To this day, I glance out of the corner of any room I'm in, and I have to look away because it reminds me of all the beatings my mother gave me. I'd be curled up in the corner trying to shield myself, and she'd attack me. She didn't think nothing of beating me in a grocery store, in the street, in front of my schoolmates, or in a courtroom. The police certainly didn't care. One time, they were supposed to write up a report on me, and my mother stormed in and beat my ass so bad they didn't even write me up. She even beat me up when I was in the right sometimes. Once when I was 11, I was shooting dice on the corner. I was up against a guy who was about 18. I had a hot hand that day, and my friends were betting on the side that I'd hit my numbers. I got down $200, but I hit my number 6 straight times. I had won $600 of his money. "Shoot one more time. Shoot for my watch," he said. Boom! I hit my 4, 5, 6. "That's the name of the game," I said. "Give me the watch." "As a matter of fact, I ain't giving you nothing," he said, and he tried to snatch the money I won from him. I started biting him. I hit him with a rock, and we started brawling. Some of my mother's friends saw the commotion and ran to our apartment. "Your son is fighting with a grown man," one of them said. My mother came storming over. All the other grown men there were letting us fight because they wanted their money. If this guy didn't pay, nobody else was going to. So I was in the middle of fighting this guy when my mother jumped on me, grabbed my hands, smacked me, and threw me down. "What are you fighting this man for?" she yelled. "What did you do to this man?" "I'm sorry, sir," she said to him. "He tried to take back his money," I protested. My mother took my money and gave it to the man and smacked my face. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker," I yelled as she pulled me away. I deserved every beating I got. I just wanted to be one of the cool kids. The kid on the street who had jewelry on and money in their pockets. The older kids, the 15-year-olds who had girlfriends. I wasn't really into girls that much then, but I liked having the clothes and getting all the attention. By then, my mother was giving up on me. She was well known in the neighborhood and knew how to speak eloquently when she needed to. Her other children had the capacity to learn, to get along with others. But then there was me. I was the only one who couldn't read and write. I couldn't grasp that stuff. "Why can't you do this?" she'd say to me. "What's wrong with you?" She must have thought I was retarded. She had taken me to all these places on Lee Avenue when I was a baby, and I'd undergo psychological evaluations. When I was young, I talk out loud to myself. I guess that wasn't normal in the 70s. Once I got into the court system, I had to go to court-mandated special ed crazy schools. Special ed was like jail. They kept you locked up until it was time to go home. They'd bus in all the antisocial kids and the fucking nuts. You were supposed to do whatever they told you to do, but I'd get up and fight with people, spit in people's faces. They gave us tokens to go back and forth to school, and I'd rob the kids for their tokens and gamble with them. I'd even rob the teachers and come to school the next day wearing the new shit I bought with their money. I did a lot of bad shit. They said I was hyperactive, so they started giving me Thorazine. They skipped the Ritalin and went straight to the big T. That's what they gave little bad black motherfuckers in the 70s. Thorazine was a trip. I'd be sitting there looking at something, but I couldn't move, couldn't do nothing. Everything was cool. I could hear everything, but I was just zonked out. I was a zombie. I didn't ask for food. They just brought out the food at the right time. They would ask, "Do you need to go to the bathroom?" And I would say, "Oh, yes, I do." I didn't even know when I got to go to the bathroom. When I took that shit, they sent me home from school. I'd stay in the house chilling, watching Rocky and his friends. My mother thought something was wrong with her baby, but I was just a badass fucking kid. They misdiagnosed me. Probably fucked me up a little, but I never took it personally when people misdiagnosed me. I always thought that bad stuff happened to me because something was wrong with me. Besides the zombies and the crazy kids, they sent the criminals to the special ed schools. Now all the criminals from different neighborhoods got to know each other. We'd go to Times Square to jostle, and we'd see all the guys from our school, all dressed up in sheepskins and fancy clothes, money in our pocket, doing the same thing. I was in Times Square in 1977, just hanging out, when I saw some guys from the old neighborhood in Bed-Stuy. We were talking, and the next thing I knew, one of them snatched the purse of this prostitute. She was furious and threw a cup of hot coffee at my face. The cops started coming towards us, and my friend Bub and I took off. We ran into a XXX rated theater to hide, but the hooker came in shortly after with the cops. "That's them," she pointed to Bub and I. "Me? I didn't do shit," I protested, but the cops paraded us out and put us in the backseat of their car. But this crazy lady wasn't finished. She reached in through the back window and scratched my face with her long hooker nails. They drove us to the Midtown precinct. As we pulled away from Times Square, I saw my friends from Bed-Stuy, the ones who did all this shit, watching from the street. I had been arrested many times, so I was used to the formation, but they looked at my rap sheet, and I just had too many arrests. So I was going straight to Spofford. They drove us to the Midtown precinct. As we pulled away from Times Square, I saw my friends from Bed-Stuy, the ones who did all this shit, watching from the street. I had been arrested many times, so I was used to the formation, But they looked at my rap sheet, and I just had too many arrests. So I was going straight to Spofford. Spofford was a juvenile detention center located in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. I had heard horror stories about Spofford, people being beaten up by other inmates or by the staff, so I wasn't too thrilled to be going there. They issued me some clothes and gave me a cell by myself, and I went to sleep. In the morning, I was terrified. I had no idea what was going to go down in that place. But when I went to the cafeteria for breakfast, it was like a class reunion. I immediately saw my friend Curtis, the guy that I robbed the house with, who got clobbered by the owner. Then I started seeing all my old partners. Chill, I said to myself. All your boys are here. After that first time, I was going in and out of Spofford like it was nothing. Spofford became like a timeshare for me. During one of my visits there, we were all brought to the assembly room where we watched a movie called The Greatest about Muhammad Ali. When it was over, we all applauded and were shocked when Ali himself walked out onto the stage. He looked larger than life. He didn't have to even open his mouth. As soon as I saw him walk out, I thought, I want to be that guy. He talked to us and it was inspirational. I had no idea what I was doing with my life, but I knew that I wanted to be like him. It's funny, people don't use that terminology anymore. If they see a great fight, they may say, I want to be a boxer. But nobody says, I want to be like him. There are not many Alis. Right then, I decided I wanted to be great. I didn't know what it was I'd do, but I decided that I wanted people to look at me like I was on show, the same way they did to Ali. Don't get me wrong. I didn't get out of Spofford and do a 360. I was still a little sewer rat. My situation at home was deteriorating. After all those arrests and special schools and medications, my mother had no hope for me at all. But she had never had any hope for me going back to my infancy. I just know that one of those medical people, some racist asshole, some guy who said that I was fucked up and developmentally retarded, stole my mother's hope for me right then and there. And they stole any love or security I might have had. I never saw my mother happy with me or proud of me doing something. I never got a chance to talk to her or know her. Professionally, that would have no effect on me, but emotional and psychologically, it was crushing. I would be with my friends and I'd see their mothers kiss them. I never had that. You think that if she let me sleep in her bed until I was 15, she would have liked me. But she was drunk all the time. Since I was now in the correctional system, the authorities decided to send me to group homes to get straightened out. They would take a bunch of kids who were down, abused, bad, psycho kids and throw them together in some home where the government paid people to take us in. The whole thing was a hustle. I would never last more than 2 days. I'd just run away. One time, I was in a group home in Brentwood, Long Island. I called home and bitched and moaned to my mother that I didn't have any weed there. So she made Rodney buy me some and deliver it to me. She was always a facilitator. Eventually, I was sent to Mount Loretto, a facility in Staten Island, but nothing could change me. Now I was pickpocketing guys on the Staten Island ferry. You never know who you're pickpocketing. Sometimes you pickpocket the wrong guy, a bad motherfucker, and he wants his money back. He just starts clocking everyone. Who took my motherfucking money? He screamed. He started beating on everyone around him. The whole ferry had to jump on the motherfucker. My friend was the one who jostled him, and he kicked my friend in the ass, but he didn't know he had gotten the perpetrator. We got off the boat, and we're all laughing because we got the money. Even my friend was laughing through his tears because he was still in pain. That guy would have thrown us off the boat if he knew we had his money. I get scared now just thinking about the kind of life I was living then. Oh, God. He would have killed us. And he was just that fucking fierce. I was released from the juvie facility on Staten Island at the beginning of 1978, and I went back to Brownsville. I kept hearing that a lot of my friends were getting killed over ridiculous things like jewelry or a couple of $100s. I was getting a little worried, but I never stopped robbing and stealing. I watched the guys I looked up to, the older guys. I watched them rise, but I saw their bumps in the road too. I watched them get beat mercilessly because they were always hustling people. But still, they never stopped. It was in their blood. The neighborhood was getting more and more ominous, and I was getting more and more hated. I was just 11 years old, but sometimes I'd walk through the neighborhood, minding my own business, and a landlord or owner of a store would see me walking by and would pick up a rock or something and throw it at me. "Motherfucking little thieving bastard," they'd yell. They'd see me in my nice clothes, and they just knew that I was a nigga stealing from them. I was walking past a building one time, and I stopped to talk to a friend, and this guy, Nicky, came out with a shotgun, and his friend had a pistol. His friend pulled out a pistol, and Nicky put the shotgun over my penis. "Listen, little nigga, if I hear you've been going up on that motherfucking roof again, I'll fuck you up. If I ever see you in this neighborhood again, I'm gonna blow your balls off," he said. I didn't even know who the fuck this guy was, but he evidently knew who I was. Can you believe I was just so used to people coming up to me and stepping to me like that? A few months before I turned 13, I got arrested again for possession of stolen property. They'd exhausted all the places in the New York City vicinity to keep me. I don't know what kind of scientific diagnostic tests they used, but they decided to send me to the Triumphant School for Boys, an upstate New York facility for juvenile offenders about an hour northwest of Albany. My mother was happy that I was going upstate. By then, a lot of grown men had started coming to the house looking for me. "Your brother is a dirty motherfucker. I'm gonna kill your brother," they'd tell my sister. "He's just a kid," she'd say. "It's not like he took your wife or something." Imagine that. Grown men coming to your house looking for you, and you're 12 years old. Ain't that some shit? Can you blame my mother for giving up all hope for me?